Mood tracker is an idea, kind of a concept that I came up with a couple of years ago. And I came up with it, I thought, out of necessity, because I found that the way that a lot on the regional and national level thought about a fan base was born out of what they heard from the biggest mouths in those respective fan bases. The problem is, your most vocal fans don't always represent the true sentiment of a vast majority of your fan base. So I just talked about the 595 rule a second ago. Well, in mood tracker world, we have the 80-20 rule. What we want to know in our mood tracker quest here, we want to know what's the temperature of the 80%. The 20% are the fringe minorities on the optimistic and pessimistic side of the spectrum. Take those off, okay? Cut both ends off the snake. Let's take the remaining 80%. That's the vast majority. They're usually a pretty silent majority. They're not, posting 47 times on the message board every day. They're not lighting up the board on the call-in shows, but yet they are a majority of your fan base. And so that's what we're going to do. We did it with the SEC West the other night. We're going to do it with the SEC East tonight. And what I do is I basically just tell you in a sentence, sometimes in like a fragment of a sentence, where the 80%'s mentality, where their heart and their mind is right now. So let's start with Florida. With Florida, the current mood with them is the time is now. I said the exact same thing for Texas A&M the other night. You could essentially make this Texas A&M's sister program for this year, for mood tracker purposes, in the SEC East. The time is now. No one has complained. There hasn't been much to complain about at Florida. They have been good. They were good as soon as Dan Mullen got there. You know the resume, a couple of back-to-back New Year's Six bowl wins. A lot has been good. They have lost to Georgia a couple times now, but it hasn't been in blowout fashion. They've been competitive. But now everything's sort of been building to this year. We've talked about this a number of times on the show. I'm not going to rehash it all, but the scheduling dynamics, the cross-division scheduling dynamics favor them over Georgia. Quarterback position, it looks like for the moment, and that's depending on what happens at Georgia, favors them over Georgia. They didn't have any turnover. They had minimal turnover, we'll say, on the coaching staff over the offseason. Both coordinators still in place. We can't say that for Georgia. So that gives people a lot of optimism. And it's also that a lot of people just were optimistic when they saw in a short sample size what Dan Mullen was able to do with Kyle Trask. I say all that to say this. Every Florida fan, or virtually every Florida fan I've spoken to, expects to win the SEC East this year. Having said that, they're willing to reserve judgment. They're willing to reserve any criticism because they understand it takes a little time. Okay, we weren't necessarily Ohio State South. It wasn't Dan Mullen was going to come in here and immediately take us to the playoff year one. Anything worthwhile, it takes a little time to build. So there have been some whispers. They wish that they were top 5 in recruiting. They wish that offensively maybe they looked a little better with Felipe Franks, but whatever. They haven't been loudly complaining, and they're still not. But the time is now. That is the collective sentiment. Because if they get out of that game in Jacksonville and their SEC Eastern Division hopes are dashed again, it won't be quite as pleasant. And to be honest with you, I don't even think they'll care if they're chalked in for another New Year's Six game. If it's a product of, Alabama or Georgia just going to higher bowl games, so out of default, they kind of get shoehorned into one. I don't think that ends with the same sentiment this year. So it is show me time in a lot of ways for Florida Gator fans. Now, as for Georgia, this is complicated. This one's really complicated because there are 2 different mood trackers that we have to follow parallel to each other. I'm from Georgia. I know you guys. A couple of you I've spoken with today about this subject, and to your credit, you both agreed with me with what I'm about to say. There's one road over here, and that's the public road. But the public road for Georgia when it comes to mood tracker is what they say in public, what they say when they're around members of other fan bases. If you're an Auburn fan over here, you're a Florida guy, you're a Bama guy, and we go out to lunch and I'm a Georgia guy, I'm telling you I'm still fully confident. I'm telling you we've got a roster about as loaded as anyone else. Bama, you're the only one other at the table besides me that could even compete with that moniker, and Kirby Smart's got us right on the precipice. We knocked on the door a couple of years ago. I mean, we're there every year. We keep swinging. Eventually, we're going to knock that thing down, and we're only continuing to improve our quarterback position. We've got Brock Vandergriff committed. That's a 5-star kid. We've also got JT Daniels on campus. And if that's not bright enough, we've also got Jamie Newman, who we think will start for us this year. We just made the change at coordinator, the one thing that was holding us back. Now we're going to take care of that. That's the public road. But then, when Georgia folks are amongst themselves, there's this little different tune. They're not negative, but there's this little different tune. And here's what they say. When they look over both shoulders and they know they're all alone and it's just Georgia folks in the room, what they say is, they lower their voice a little bit and they lean in and they say, they don't give out trophies for recruiting. We can win all the recruiting championships that we want to. Eventually, we're going to have to get over the hump on the field. And I know it's tough, and we're existing here in an era where Alabama's on this unprecedented run, but someone's going to knock them off, and it should be us. There's no reason that it can't be us. I mean, we've beaten them. According to 24/7 Sports, we've beaten them in recruiting a couple of times. Now, notice the voice is still low. We've made some very questionable, and by we mean our head coach. We've made some very questionable decisions in some very key moments in games. We have had control the last 2 times we played that team in Tuscaloosa, and we let it get away, because that's what we think. We Georgia fans, we think we let it get away. We think we offered those games up on silver platters. They didn't take it if we didn't give it to them. So, having said all that, it's good that we made this move with Todd Monken coming in. It's good, but is Kirby Smart going to fully commit to that? Or are we going to sit here and watch us have the best defense in America this year and see it wasted? Because we can't open it up enough offensively, and we can't modernize enough offensively. Listen, recruiting classes are great, but that's how you talk when you're building towards something. We should be there. We should be at the something now. So those are very first world problems. But that's what Georgia fans talk about amongst themselves. Again, they think that they've got it all ahead of them. Both camps, the public and the private road, think that they have it all ahead of them. But when they're private, don't think for a second, you Georgia fans know what I'm talking about, don't think for a second that they don't look around and say, hello, let's do it, let's win it, let's go, let's get it done. As for Tennessee, different program right now, okay, different stratosphere, so the expectations a little bit lower. Long term, they're the same, but they're a little bit lower. I have forever respect for the Tennessee fan base for showing patience with the last, it feels like 10 failed coaching experiments. Don't think that this one, the Jeremy Pruitt experiment, I think it'll be long-term. Don't think it'll be a failed experiment. So the fan base, the collective mood tracker for the 80%, the majority, the silent majority of Tennessee fans is they need a taste this year. They at least need a really, really nice appetizer. Now, they would love if their meal arrived early, but they don't want to look at the menu anymore. They got to get at least an appetizer, and that means, of course, beating one of Oklahoma, Florida, Alabama, or Georgia. They've got to be competitive. There can't be any 49-10 setbacks. Now, certainly, we're looking past the idea of another Georgia State debacle. Like, we think we've got that rectified. We think we've got it figured out. Now, we got to run with the big boys, and we got to clip one of the big boys. We thought it happened in our first year with Jeremy Pruitt. We thought it happened when we went to Auburn, but that turned out to be a little bit of a mirage. Good win, but it turned out to be a little bit of a mirage, made us think that maybe we were a little bit closer than we thought we were. We're not demanding the entire entree this year, but we just need, bring us the Wisconsin cheese bites. Bring us the potato wedges. Just give us something to eat this year. And then, this time next year, then we'll be asking where the steak is. Just got to have a taste if you're Tennessee. South Carolina, I would argue we just went down the rung another step. South Carolina, right now, one of my favorite Rod Stewart songs is just Reason to Believe. Love the live version of it. Still I look to find a reason to believe. That's what they want. They want to buy in. They don't want to be calling from Muschamp's head. They don't want another coaching change there. No one wants to hit the reset button and start over. But yet, if you leave them no choice, you leave them no choice. So the reason to believe is hopefully, for South Carolina fans' sake, going to come in the form of Mike Bobo, married to Ryan Helinski, and married to a new strength and conditioning plan that keeps players on the field. Therefore, we get to do more with those players, and we push the right buttons and put those players in the right position. And offensively, we come out of this wasteland that we've been in, and we actually look like something. South Carolina football looks like something. When people describe us, whether they be in Sacramento, California, or Albany, New York, finally we have an identity about ourselves. People actually have something that they have to have a little concern about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday when they prepare for us. That hasn't been South Carolina. So the reason to believe, that's what they got to have. Just give them a reason to believe. You don't have to go 10-2, but you can't go 4-8. You can't be missing a bowl game again. I don't know what the magic number is this year, especially considering all the external ramifications with COVID and decreased football revenue. But if it were a normal year, I got to think, got to be 8-4 or better. And I've got some Carolina folks that say it has to be 9 wins. I don't know that I agree with that, but it certainly can't be miss a bowl game. And it doubly certainly can't be beat Georgia and still miss a bowl game. How, you know what, 100 years from now, I'll still be trying to figure out how they figured out a way to go into Athens, Georgia and beat Georgia and still miss a bowl game. Georgia's supposed to be the reason that you do miss a bowl game. Oh, man, that's rough.